Welcome to Whisperer of Madness. If you're enjoying the story, consider liking the video and subscribing. It really helps grow the channel and this community. Serpent blood modification. Nissa sounded very gentle. The person who was the head of the Tyler family at that time has been waiting here. Would you like to meet him? There's no need for that. Leyland waved his arms. He'd never been interested in those who were so brazen in looking for benefits. Noticing him sinking into silence immediately after, Nissa retreated tactfully. After a long while, he sighed deeply. Neela was a very smart woman after all, while Anna was slightly foolish. I never thought Bicky would have the perseverance to do that. Leyland knew Neela's personality very well. She was adaptable and knew when to advance and retreat. It was only expected for her to meet a good end. Anna's organization had only been a way out that Leyland had prepared while he was an acolyte. It was understandable that it could not hold out for long. What Leyland found the strangest was Bicky. With her personality, she evidently wasn't the kind of Magus who liked to work hard. It seemed like that matter had influenced her greatly, to the point that her personality had changed. All three of them were good friends of Leyland's, perhaps even closer than that. If he could still see them, he would naturally want to help. However, it didn't matter if he couldn't. Leyland left the graveyard after indulging in nostalgia for a while, returning to the luxurious room that the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy had prepared specially for him. Patriarch, Krupp bowed deferentially. Now, however, he seemed vastly different from before. The color of his eyes and pupils had changed, and they were turning pure black. The lines on his face were more gentle, and he had grown more handsome, emitting a unique charm. How's your body? Can you get used to it? Leyland's eyes shot out blue light that scanned his body up and down. There were many methods that could be used to raise one's strength quickly, but the most suitable for Krupp was the modification of his bloodline. Krupp had been receiving a transplant of Leyland's bloodline all this while. It was rather like contaminating a lower-ranked being with the power of a higher-ranked one. Though Krupp had chosen the path of a Magus, he was still only a rank 1. With the methods Leyland had currently, it was easy for him to push him onto the path of a bloodline warlock. Not only was the aura of a bloodline warlock rippling out of Krupp's body currently, his energy undulations had quietly crossed the threshold of rank 2. I'm all right. It's just uncomfortable, like even my marrow is burning. Krupp was feeling very emotional right now. A bit of pain was a cheap price to pay for the modification to a Magus bloodline, something that would give them great power. Such a chance was rare, not something one would find even if they were begging for it. Now that he'd crossed over to rank 2 by drawing on the power of Leyland's bloodline, Krupp was completely subservient to him. That's natural with bloodline transplants. Remember to meditate using Kem-In's pupil a few times when you return, Leyland said, nodding inwardly at the information the AI chip had gathered. Leyland had planned Krupp's modifications out. After all, the South Coast branch of the Farlier family needed a powerful guardian. And once Leyland transported a Kem-In bloodline into the boy, his ability of control as a Kem-In emperor have him great control over him. A rank 5 emperor bloodline will have an extraordinary effect. Just this bloodline force pushed Krupp to rank 2, and might get him to rank 3 in just 50 more years. The possibility of breaking through to Morning Star is... Glints of intelligence flashed in Leyland's eyes. He'd naturally used the Kem-In emperor bloodline, but it wasn't his own. Leyland's own bloodline was far too powerful, and just a single drop of it would cause Krupp to explode. Since a first-generation Warlock's bloodline was too much, Leyland had instead given Krupp the umbilical blood that had been gathered from Sire's birth. A second-generation Warlock bloodline may be weaker than Leyland's, but it was still real rank 5 Kem-In emperor blood. It was diluted and hadn't matured, but that's what made it suitable for Krupp. Now that he carried Sire's blood, Krupp could be considered a third-generation Warlock. In other words, he was effectively Leyland's grandson. At this time, the AI chip's robotic voice sounded again. Beep. Bloodline weakening graph completed. Estimated degeneration to giant Kem-In serpent bloodline, 15th generation. Estimated further degeneration at 34th generation. The weakening of Warlock bloodlines was something that couldn't be avoided. In order to keep the family bloodline pure, they had to practice endogamy or use even more sinister methods with hopes that the deterioration of the bloodline could be drawn out. However, no matter how much was sacrificed, the process wouldn't be pushed back more than a century. In other words, the chance of a rank 5 Warlock appearing in the Farlier family is pretty high before the 15th generation. Leyland pondered over this thought while stroking his chin. It wasn't true that everyone with the Kem-Yin Emperor bloodline would become a rank 5 warlock. Even within the Ouroboros clan, there were many with Kem-Yin bloodlines, but only Gilbert and the other 2 dukes had reached Morning Star. Even Bevis with his rank 6 bloodline wasn't guaranteed to reach the Breaking Dawn realm and become a monarch. He only had the potential to do so. Hence, while descendants that inherited Leyland's rank 5 Kem-Yin Emperor bloodline only needed to work hard and would easily reach rank 4, whether they reached rank 5 was still a question. As someone who had gone through this process himself, Leyland understood clearly that advancing as Magi did not only require a large amount of resources and hard work. Luck was a very important factor as well. Other Magi did not have an AI chip at the side like Leyland. They couldn't run simulations and predict possibilities for advancement. Understood, my lord. Having been modified by Kem-Yin Emperor blood, Krupp's respect towards Leyland had evolved into a dependence and reverence from his very soul. He had the Kem-Yin bloodline, and humility before the king of one's race had been carved into his very blood and genetics. It could not be changed. This is truly an intoxicating feeling. Leyland's eyes flashed as he continued to think. As I am right now, Krupp probably wouldn't say no even if I were to order him to kill everyone he loves and then commit suicide. He'd even risk his life for this mission. The snake dowager's control over other serpents the same. I'm probably the only one of my kind. Leyland's finger kept brushing against his cheek. His forehead had been covered by the cold mask, and the all-snake curses mark was dead silent with no visible movements. However, Leyland could sense traces of fine bloodline force being absorbed by it from all areas of his body as it increased in strength. Though there wasn't much of an effect on him, now considering the rate at which it was happening, his bloodline force would be absorbed completely in 2 more years, leaving him a regular human once more. Krupp's display showed how the controlling ability of the Kem-Yin Emperor was a revolt against the Snake Dowager's own authority. Were he to break through his bloodline shackles, perhaps all Kem-Yins would break away from her rule. This was something she would never accept. Hence, a conflict between them definitely could not be avoided. Also, Director Nissa is waiting outside and hoping to see you. While Leyland was deep in thought, Krupp had been standing respectfully at the side like the most loyal soldier or servant. He'd moved forward to make his report only when there was a reaction from him. Nissa, is there anything else she needs? Leyland's brows furrowed slightly. It should be about other visitors. Ever since news spread that my lord is staying at the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy, many dark Magus organizations have dispatched emissaries to meet you. Some leaders have even come over personally, the head of the Lighthouse of the Night being one. As he said this, Krupp sighed slightly in his mind. Tyrants among the dark Magi like the leader of the Lighthouse of the Night were absolute existences in his eyes, ones to be looked up to. However, they'd come forward so humbly and waited for a meeting with his patriarch. It made him feel honored. Also, a few light Magi organizations have secretly sent emissaries as well. Krupp saw the calm look on Leyland's face and continued, My lord, do you think? Set a time. I'll see them all. Leyland waved his hands. I never thought my lord would visit the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy. It truly is the honor of our professors and students. Elsewhere, Nissa was speaking to a Magus clad in black robes, whose eyes flamed a dark green. She was accompanying him on a stroll through the interior of the Abyssal Bone Forest. The Abyssal Bone Forest managed to produce a genius like Lord Leyland. It surely has some redeeming qualities. The black-robed man was evidently the leader of the Lighthouse of the Night, the strongest dark Magus organization. With its massive network, he'd quickly gained intel on Leyland's terrifying battle achievements, followed by other general information on him. He couldn't remain seated after he heard it all. After all, this Lord Leyland was very likely a great Magus who had entered the Morning Star realm. Just some advice on his path of advancement would leave him very grateful. Lord Leyland relied on his own talents. The Abyssal Bone Forest Academy was merely lucky enough to instruct him. Nissa did not dare exaggerate when it came to this, and instead told the truth. Granting audience and captive, whatever the matter, Lord Leyland is Abyssal Bone Forest Academy's greatest success and fortune. The glance the leader of Lighthouse of the Night shot at Nissa hinted at something, and no matter how hard she tried to conceal it, a hint of glee appeared in her eyes. The greater Leyland's reputation was, the better it was for the Academy. With his fame, the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy would definitely be able to expand enormously under her administration. She could even accomplish more than what all the previous directors had been able to. This was the petty and low reason for which Nissa was trying so hard to invite him to join them. If I could make use of their good relationship and get Leyland to become a famed professor at the academy. Just the idea had Nissa trembling in her excitement. She was perhaps smiling even in her sleep. Also, I seem to see a lot of old friends from the Light Magi here. Green-eyed Magus stared at Nissa with a half-smile. Yes, there are quite a few. Enia Ivory Ring Tower, Four Seasons Garden. Practically all the large Light Magus organizations have secretly sent people to make contact with us. Since it was basically impossible to hide it from him, Nissa just nodded and admitted it. Who? Looks like his reputation has terrified them. The leader laughed in a strange manner, like an owl in the night. The Magi of light and dark coexisted in the South Coast. However, the Light Magi were evidently much stronger and occupied most of the resource-rich regions, and the Dark Magi could only eke out an existence hidden in the corners. The leaders of the Light Magi had steadily suppressed them. With the appearance of the Gargamel, there was now a three-way confrontation. The Dark and Light Magi might have temporarily stopped fighting, but the enmity between them had not been resolved, only inhibited by the existence of a powerful external enemy. Now, with a Morning Star Magus who had started off as a Dark Magus, this was more than enough for the old Light Magi to be like cats on hot bricks. At this thought, a sneer appeared about the leader's lips. Director Nissa and this lord here. At this moment, Krupp appeared before Nissa, and it was as if the figure of a snake flashed in his eyes. The bloodline aura he had caused even the leader, who was a rank 3 Magus, to feel his heart palpitate. The Patriarch is willing to meet you. Please come with me. Krupp's hair and eyes almost turned completely black, darkness elemental particles extremely dense as they strive to outdo each other and wiggle into his pores. Such a scene astounded Nissa and the leader. Having said this, Krupp led the way while Nissa and the leader transmitted each other messages secretly. So this Magus is that lord's grandson, the descendant of the Farlier family. The leader's eyes were filled with curiosity. After all, a powerful rank 2 Magus was very rare in the South Coast. Any one of them could take over an organization and still hold immense power. He's obviously only advanced very recently. While in history, it's common for that to happen to the descendants of high-ranked Magi, but a hint of hesitance appeared in his voice. Yes, this Magus isn't Sire Leyland's descendant, but only a branch from his brother. Nissa knew what he wanted to ask and gave the answer. A lateral relative. His eyes went wide before he lowered his head to chuckle. I now have even more expectations towards Sire Leyland. We're here. Krupp brought Nissa and the leader into a large hall. There, many Magi were already in wait, but there were two entirely different groups. At one side were Magi, with many wearing black Magus robes. Their auras were ice cold and evil. After seeing the arrival of the leader of Lighthouse of the Night, many drew close and greeted him like moths to a flame. The Magi at the other side who saw this mostly huffed, not looking very good. They were clad in white robes, with many decorations of plants that represented life on it. Light and a holy aura began to emanate from their bodies. He called them all at one go. I've been greeting the leader of the Lighthouse of Night all this while, but this... Nissa gritted her teeth, and her expression became a wry smile. With Leyland's absolute power, that bit of authority she had as the director was probably even lighter than a feather in the eyes of the Abyssal Bone Forest professors. Hence, after being ordered by Leyland, they carried out what he asked without hesitation, and even gave her the misconception that they had abandoned her. No, this wasn't a misconception. Nissa knew very well that as long as that man were to say that he wanted to be the director of the academy, she would immediately be made to renounce her position. Thankfully, he had never been fond of power and status. Furthermore, the academy was just much too small for him, to the point that he might turn his nose up at it. Nissa, who thought about this, finally relaxed, the bit of worry she had disappearing. Everyone! Krupp stood on the platform in the middle of the hall with Darley beside him. While she had not undergone bloodline modification, she'd been observing Leyland and learning from him. Leyland's knowledge was abundant, and he could give perfect answers to all her questions, which very beneficial to her without her being aware of it. Flames flickered, and Leyland floated above the place where the master should be, black eyes scanning his surroundings. A terrifying and vast aura that was like countless stars in the skies filled the hall. All the Magi that Leyland looked in the eye, Whether the rank 2 Nissa or rank 3 leader of Lighthouse of the Night felt a piercing pain in their eyes and subconsciously lowered their heads, even bending their waists. "Greetings, Lord Leyland." Having personally sensed Leyland's aura and how terrifying he was, the Magi had no disillusions about his strength. "Rise!" Seeing the many Magi who had bowed, Leyland raised his arms slightly. Immediately after, the Magi below the platform felt themselves being raised by a warm draft, holding within strength that they could not oppose. The Magi could not help but stand up straight, eyes full of astonishment. "I'm afraid it's true that this lord has already advanced to be a morning star." The leader of Lighthouse of the Night's pupils flashed. He now had no doubt at all towards Leyland, who had easily defeated a top-notch master of the Light Magi and even destroyed their final trump card, the Blade of Avarice. Leyland glanced through. Lighthouse of the Night, Enia Ivory Ring Tower, Four Seasons Garden, Skeleton Throne. Besides the representative from the spirit-slaying sect, everyone in the Magus world from the south coast had arrived. These top-grade dark and light Magi organizations were very well known back in the day. Now, however, they could only creep at his feet. However, Leyland did not even twitch. The Magi under the platform could not tell Leyland's expression under the mask and merely lowered their heads humbly. Leyland continued to speak. "I wonder what all of the Magi here have come for." The Magi exchanged glances. The reason they were here was mostly to verify Leyland's might and his attitude. Based on what had happened, there was no question about his strength. Just displaying the tip of the iceberg had them gasping in admiration, and nobody dared personally test it out with a battle. Besides that, this lord's attitude towards the two factions seemed rather mild. It wasn't good or bad, as if he had no ambitions to unify the South Coast. This discovery had many light Magi sighing in relief. "Lord Leyland." At this moment, the leader of the Lighthouse of the Night stood out. "Speak." Leyland extended his arm and made a polite gesture for him to go on. Inside, he was sighing a little. In his acolyte days, he'd once seen the leader during the bloodbath for the secret dimension. At that time, just a gaze could cause him grievous injuries or kill him. However, the tables had turned. With just a look, he would immediately be stricken with terror and die miserably. "Please forgive me for my boldness in saying this, but have you already become a rank 4 Magus?" The leader of the Lighthouse of the Night hesitated but eventually asked. Things like status had long since lost interest to him. The only thing that would attract him and cause him to invest his mind and body in was a thirst towards a higher realm. Hearing this question, the hall quieted down. Everyone watched Leyland expectantly. This question. Just as he was about to answer, a smile appeared about his lips. "Please forgive me, but I will answer this later. Let us first meet a friend." "A friend." The leader was stunned, and immediately noticed two translucent faint figures pressing on either side of a demonic being that suddenly emerged from the void. "That's the Gargamel of the spirit-slaying sect." Between the two void assassins was a sole demonic being. It had a mask of a horned demon, and its body was as concentrated as a black crystal. Vast soul undulations was transmitted from its body, causing the expressions on these Magi to change. This was a level that surpassed all of them who were advancing towards the path of Morning Star. "Is that really the Gargamel?" "Definitely. This strength that's mixed with resentment and lunacy is something all Magi who have seen it even once can't misidentify." Many Magi whispered incessantly amongst each other, and then watched Leyland with reverence in their eyes. Confirmation and traveling together with the appearance of the Gargamel, the Magi present sank into a mysterious silence. They knew very well how terrifying and troublesome the Gargamel was. Not only was it powerful at magic, it could support its body with vengeful dead spirits, allowing it to maintain peak condition at all times. Even when struck by the light Magi's final trump card, the Blade of Avarice, it had only been injured and not killed. It only went low profile for a while before making waves again. If not for the Magi being unable to deal with it, the spirit-slaying sect wouldn't be able to rise in the South Coast to be regarded equal to the dark and light Magi. Now, however, the sect chief, the Gargamel that the disciples fiercely believed in, had been seized so easily. The demon that had caused so much terror was suppressed under the platform. The huge contrast left the Magi questioning whether they were in an illusion. However, they had no choice but to admit that this was reality after a few tests. Even Leyland's subordinates had the ability to take down a peak rank 3 Magus. Capturing someone at the same rank alive was more difficult than killing them. This was something known to all magi. They would perhaps only have a slight increase in respect if Leyland had captured the Gargamel himself. However, this was his subordinates' work. The effect on them was so great that it couldn't possibly be better from Leyland's perspective. The two void assassins bowed slightly and disappeared into the void. Such strange methods caused many magi to have changes of expressions. Now, they understood very well that with just a command, he didn't have to do anything at all. Just his two subordinates could eliminate all the magi here. Recognizing that, they no longer dared to have any thoughts about Leyland, fearing he would notice. "Gaga, Jeej, you are, Leyland." A hoarse voice sounded from behind the Gargamel's horned white bone mask. It sounded intermittent, but was evidently much more quick-witted than when he'd first seen it. "Yes, how's that pitiful magi mother and daughter doing?" Leyland asked indifferently. He was obviously talking about Old Devil and her daughter in Teljo City then. The old witch had made a deal with the Gargamel to revive her daughter, and even tried to offer Leyland up as a sacrifice. Of course, after Leyland's counterattack, they had suffered consequences and fused to form a strange being. "I ate those two useless pieces of trash long ago." The Gargamel's speech became more fluent. "Is that so?" Leyland seemed to be in a daze for a moment, as if recalling some distant memories. "Gaga." At this moment, two bundles of crimson flames emerged from under the Gargamel's bone mask. Numerous runes burst on its body, and a layer of thick black fog spread. "Crap! It's gone out of its bindings!" The magi shouted in their fear and anger, bodies flickering with colorful innate defensive spells. "The home of all living things can only be the tomb of the soul for eternity. The Gargamel." The Gargamel yelled as if chanting runes of sacrifice that constantly echoed. Boom. Amidst the curse, the Gargamel's body exploded and countless figures emerged from its body. There were the old, young, male, female, and the one common point they had were their vicious faces as well as eyes that were dripping blood. "Keek, let's destroy everything together. Soul disaster." The bone mask exploded with a rumble and turned into powder that flew through the air. Bits of light fused with the figures from before, the terrifying aura they emitted causing even the leader of the lighthouse of the night's expression to change. The peak rank 3 Gargamel had now was treading on the threshold of Morning Star. The dreadful attack formed by ruining its own body meant he had no thoughts that he could survive as a rank 3 Magus himself. He knew very well that once such a spell completely broke out and spread, the magi in the hall would die, and even the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy would not be spared. "I'm going all out. Though using secret techniques will consume much of our measly life force, it's still better than dying here." The leader called out in a low voice, a layer of fine black runes appearing around his body. They were like tadpoles cruising through the air, as if about to collide with that sole body of nothingness. Wang, wang, wang. At this moment, blue starlight descended, and the leader's body quivered. He found that his spiritual force had gone stagnant, and even the secret technique he was risking his life force for was forcefully being suppressed. He felt no weakness, and the backlash had evidently been pushed down and not consuming his life force at all. This. His eyes went wide as he watched the stars that spread from Leyland's back. The light blue starlight brought with it a cold brightness that penetrated through the layers of defense and ground of the Abyssal Bone Forest, arriving in the hall. This made it seem as if the top of the hall was a dome showing the night sky, with bits of starlight projecting and showing inverted images of gorgeous lights. Accompanying the lights was a terrifying pressure that caused elemental particles to be rejected. The night domain that the leader had always been proud of exploded with a rumble in front of the pressure like bubbles. "Ah, gaga, jai jai." The numerous spirit bodies in the sky were like bugs frozen in amber, unable to move at all. No magi were injured. This is," the leader trembled, crouching down almost involuntarily, "the Morning Star domain of a Morning Star Magus." Compared to the fake domain of a rank 3 Magus, the exhibition of a real Morning Star domain with prowess that was terrifying to the extreme made him seem to be a joke. "Gargamel, did you think I really didn't notice what you'd been doing?" Leyland looked calm as he watched the many faint figures in the air. He grabbed forward casually, and a soul that looked dazed automatically flew over. Immediately after, the look on the soul's face became sinister, body covered with black and 2 horns growing on the tips of his head as it growled at Leyland unceasingly. "You look like you're going to implode yourself, but you actually hid your soul in one of the figures. As long one of these figures and vengeful spirits escape, you can use that body and revive yourself. Leyland coldly scanned the numerous vengeful spirits in the air. Very impressive. Perhaps regular Morning Star Magi might not notice and let you escape, but it's a pity. You met me. Leyland clenched his right fist. Boom. Large numbers of vengeful spirits were like popcorn as they popped, a silver vortex forming and pulling the many figures and their remains within. No tilde tilde tilde. A very unwilling roar was heard in the air before it finally became softer and disappeared. Many spirits formed from the Gargamel's self-implosion, as well as the one that Leyland had specifically picked out, all disappeared as they entered the silver vortex. Pack. The Morning Star domain dissipated, and all that had just happened was like a dream, yet it happened in real life. Any greeting Morning Star Magus, Lord Leyland Farlier. At this moment, the leader of the Lighthouse of the Night sounded. He knelt on the floor respectfully, looking as if he were a pilgrim. Greetings to Lord Leyland. Now, the other Magi knelt like they had just woken from a dream, faces filled with excitement. All that had happened just now, and the appearance of the Morning Star domain made it clear that the Magus sitting at the main seat, Leyland Farlier, had truly entered the rank 4 realm. In the South Coast, after thousands of years, a Morning Star had finally appeared once more. In that moment, some elderly Magi felt their eyes go blurry, filled with heat. In front of the metal door where many light Magi were guarding, many peak rank 1 elite troops were with rapt attention as they did their job. Not far away, there were many rank 2 Magi undulations transmitting from a few buildings. Sue, Sue, Sue. 3 human figures appeared in the air, flying towards the metal door. Stop right there. This is the entrance to the pocket dimension of the eternal planes, and it's protected by the Lighthouse of the Night. What do you think you're doing? A spiritual force undulation was transmitted. Immediately after, the Magus standing leftmost hummed coldly, eyes emitting dark green light. It's me! Revered leader. The rank 3 Magus undulations dispersed, and the Magi who had been on their guard had their right hands on their chest as they greeted him. 3 human figures touched down, revealing 2 figures on top of that of the leader. At the rightmost was a beautiful female Magus who had an exquisite face like a doll. Now, however, she and Annie automatically took a step back and allowed a space, as if not daring to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Magi between them. The Magus in the middle wore dark golden, black scholarly robes with a cutting that was very proper. He had a very noble aura and had a black mask on his face with mysterious patterns on it. Such dressing, and to be accompanied by their own leader, immediately rang the warning bells in this guard Magi. Before, there had been no Magi that could stand on equal ground with their leader in the South Coast. However, this situation had changed tens of days ago. The guard Magus knelt respectfully and shouted the arrival's name. We welcome Great Morning Star Magus, Sire Leyland Farlier. We want to enter the Eternal Planes pocket dimension. Make preparations immediately, Annie ordered. Leyland nodded casually and stood by the metal door with Nissa. The Eternal Planes pocket dimension. It's been so long. Leyland watched the large metal door before him, eyes full of nostalgia. Scenes of the danger when he had advanced to rank 2 seemed to appear in his mind in that instant, every person extremely lively. Benefits and entrance the Eternal River pocket dimension had been discovered when Leyland was just a rank 1 Magus. The fact that it still hadn't been divided into respectful affiliations was something that surprised Leyland. Looking at the detailed patterns on the large metal gate that towered into the clouds, Leyland couldn't help but recall the scene when he'd advanced. That year, he'd used a large amount of this metal gate's spiritual force as well as the souls of numerous Magi to push himself forward and advance to rank 2 in one move. Memories of all that had happened were still fresh in his mind, yet all of the people in them had disappeared. Leyland felt slightly regretful. Yes, sir. Please wait a moment. That guard immediately placed his hands on the surface of the large gate. The metal gate immediately rumbled, emitting a dazzling radiance. Hey. Looking at the guard captain, Leyland let out a soft gasp. Did you discover something, Lord Leyland? The head of the Lighthouse of the Night laughed from the side. Leyland nodded. This Magus is the reincarnation of the original core of the metal gate's consciousness. When he heard these words, the guard captain's body suddenly trembled. Indeed, we put a lot of effort in then and managed to subdue the gate's core of consciousness. We then nurtured it and had it reincarnate. Finding it a suitable corporeal body required great effort. and he chuckled at the side. However, with this person, manipulating the gate of the pocket dimension has become much more convenient. Now, it is our Dark Knight Lighthouse's honored professor, Jeans. Jeans, good name, Leyland analyzed him. Until the other party was a little creeped out, he then chuckled and a spot of light flew into Jean's forehead. The surface of his body made a futile attempt to emit a layer of metal defense, but to no avail. He could only helplessly watch as the radiance entered his forehead. Sir Leyland, this is... And he grew anxious, but he did not step out and stop him. One reason was that he knew Leyland's strength, that he would only invite humiliation upon himself by doing so. Another was that recent interactions caused him to realize that Leyland was not a Magus that was easy to kill. His personality was also good, so he was doing this with some unique intention. Lad, just treat this thing as my gift, Leyland chuckled, stepped into the large gate while Nissa followed closely behind. You guys be careful. And he was confused, but still followed him in, only leaving behind Jeans who stood there in a trance. He didn't feel pain after the light invaded him. Instead, it transformed into a message that entered his sea of consciousness, instantly causing him to fall into a trance. Many alphabets formed the beginning: high-grade meditation technique, dark gold world, suitable for metal innate skill. My lord, Annie asked after he followed Leyland into the Eternal Plane's pocket dimension, unable to endure it anymore. Relax, I'm just giving him some benefits, Leyland smiled. He owed his rank 2 advancement to the core consciousness of the metal gate to the Eternal River Plane's pocket dimension. Now that he'd found a body with the same core origin, he naturally wanted to make up for what he'd done. All of this followed his personality, but Leyland wouldn't shackle himself. If he hadn't seen Jeans today, he probably wouldn't have thought of this at all. Central Continent, South Coast, Twilight Zone, and Chernobyl Islands. Leyland's gaze flickered continuously. Once I've broken free from the threads of destiny, it'll be time for me to let go of everything and break through my bloodline shackles. Although he didn't know why he wanted to do this, Leyland had a feeling that this would bring him only benefits. Huff! After listening to Leyland's explanation, although Annie was still slightly curious as to why Leyland favored Jeans, he still finally heaved a sigh. 3 rays of glaring light streaked across the sky, suddenly pushing their way through the Eternal Plane's pocket dimension. Light flickered continuously in Leyland's eyes. Ever since he'd displayed strength at Morning Star to subdue the light and dark magi, he'd essentially become the uncrowned king of the South Coast. The magi vied with each other to complete the tasks he wanted done. Whether they were a light magus or dark, just a single command from him would make them work desperately for him. Such an inconceivable thing had happened due to Leyland's power. It caused many uninformed people from the lower classes to cry out in incredulity. There were even some busybodies who proclaimed that the South Coast would soon welcome an era of peace. But in fact, they were all thinking too much. With the power of the masses at his beck of call, Leyland quickly made progress on finding people and dealing with past grudges. Krupp and Darley were also married in the meantime, Leyland having hosted the ceremony. With that done, they returned to the Chernobyl Islands to establish a kingdom in the original lands of the Farlier family. After everything was resolved, Leyland wanted to leave everything behind. But the Dark and Light Magi made a request of him. Although he wanted to leave, the Farlier family would remain behind here, and furthermore Leyland was quite interested in what the Dark and Light Magi had mentioned. Hence, he still came to this place. Leyland and the other 2 weren't ordinary Magi. They moved at extremely high speeds, and it was but a short while before they arrived at the center of the pocket dimension. A continuous building complex was present here, with the symbols of various Magus organizations in the surroundings. These were clearly large-scale ruins. There was a momentary uproar in many of the camps present at their arrival, but soon after a white light transformed into an old white-browed Magus who welcomed them. The moment he saw Leyland, he immediately bowed down in respect. Nanov pays his respects to Your Highness Leyland Farlier, the great Morning Star Magus. I hope Your Highness will forgive our rude actions before. We are willing to pay any price. This Magus was one of the impressive higher-ups of the Light Magi that had originally attacked Leyland. Ever since they'd been rebuffed by Leyland and had the Blade of Avarice destroyed, the 3 highest executives of the Light Magi fell into silence. Only, once news about Leyland advancing to Morning Star spread, Enia Ivory Ring Tower, which was Nanov's organization, carried out Leyland's orders the most thoroughly. They were at his beck and call, handling many issues with the obvious intent of atonement and to curry favor. Hence, as Leyland looked at this old scoundrel, he only rolled his eyes. Rise. Thank you, Lord Leyland. Your benevolence is like the torrential ocean, vast and boundless, as if it can contain the entire universe. Nanav stood up smiling to please him and consciously stood behind Leyland, causing Nissa and any who were at the side to be utterly speechless. I'm not here for that matter today, let's go. Leyland arrived in the sky above a patch of the ruins and looked over everything. The buildings were simple and unsophisticated yet solemn, carrying a unique appeal. They were arranged in a surprisingly logical manner and seemed to surround a mysterious spell formation. This is... Leyland's pupils narrowed, and his face turned gloomy. My lord! Eni and Nanav closed up and surrounded him. Leyland waved his hands at their inquiring gazes. I can't confirm anything for now. Let's talk after we enter the core hall. Of course. Please come with us, my lord. Eni and Nanav hurried to the front to lead the way. With those two leading, Leyland would of course be unobstructed in the remains. This place is a base that emerged after the destruction of a large gate pocket dimension. At one time, we thought that the secret of the person who made the Eternal Planes pocket dimension was here, and fought many battles for it. In the end, we still wound up concluding on a joint expedition. Nanav seemed to be a little regretful. We initially found many good things in these ruins, even remains of the ancient wisdom tree. We finished our exploration of the place 55 years ago, but who'd know we discovered even more incredible items than that. Eni added from the other side. It wasn't convincing. As the two spoke, Leyland explored the buildings one after the other to arrive at the centermost ground. This was an unnamed temple. There were large white stone pillars on all sides, and with no door and no walls, it could be entered from any direction. The roof exposed a large circular gap where the sky could be seen through the dome. The hall was absolutely empty. It was only the ground that retained even more complicated and detailed patterns. Lord Leyland, look. Eni and Norav glanced at each with looks of agony on their faces. Leyland, though, wasn't paying attention, mesmerized by the large patterns on the ground. This is AI chip conduct scan, he immediately commanded. Beep. Mission established, beginning scan. The AI chip's mechanical voice echoed, and there was a response soon after. Ancient combined sealing spell formation. Already discovered technique. Annihilating runes, dimensional seal, powerful isolation. Indeed, the building complex here is a part of the large sealing spell formation, and the core is right here. Leyland looked at the ground. The complicated patterns began to move around, as if they had a life of their own. The special nature of the ruins' core caused both parties to keep fighting around it. It wasn't until the appearances of Gargamel and the primordial spirit-slaying sect that both of us united together to explore the ruins. It caused a rapid increase in progress. Then we found. Leyland lifted his head. You found that this place was an entrance to the subterranean world's first layer, but it's been sealed. Nanav and Eni both looked at Leyland with shocked expressions. Even with their age, they'd had to flip through many antique books before they could know, but Leyland could actually recognize it at first glance. This ability. Could it be that because he was a morning star Magus, he was really omnipotent? Strengthening and way of escape, Lord Leyland is extremely erudite, Nanav said in praise. Ever since the ruins appeared, the seal has slowly been lifting. No matter what methods we think of, we haven't been able to stop this process. And you've come to me as a last resort. Leyland's snort had Nanav, and Eni break out in cold sweat, but he didn't concern himself with them, instead stroking his chin as he fell into deep thought. Although the subterranean world was rich in resources, with the violent invasion of the ancient Magi, many of the tribes, there didn't have a favorable impression of humans. Although humans remained there, after so many years would they side with the humans or the subterranean world? The latter possibility was more likely. The subterranean world was vast and boundless, and wasn't lacking in powerful morning stars even in the first layer. There should even be rank 5 existences there. Twilight Zone was only a very small part of this first layer, just like how the South Coast was just a part of the surface world. Furthermore, even in spite of its long isolation, there were many terrifying tribes there. Thus, it wasn't hard to understand why Nanav and Eni grew extremely panicky seeing the seal wither away. AI chip, based on the current rate, how much longer will the seal last? A blue light shone from Leyland's eyes before he had the answer. With a series of calculations, The AI chip gave an extremely precise answer. Beep. Calculating with current rate of decay, estimated time to total disintegration is 28,572, H34 min and 12s. To the AI chip, which had already been renewed several times, this level of operation was only the simplest. You invited me here. What exactly is it for? If it is to strengthen the seal, I'm afraid I can only delay it for at most 100 years' time. After he finished calculating, Leyland stroked his chin and said to Nanov and Eni, How can this be? Sir is a Morning Star-ranked Magus. Such an outcome caused Nanov and Eni to be a little in disbelief. HMPH, if it's just to strengthen the seal. Although it's relatively harder, it's not that I'm unable to do it. But now, the entire Eternal River Pocket Dimension has been completely developed for several hundred years. Most the remains here have also been destroyed by you. Leyland snorted, watching Nanov and Eni. His tone was very hostile. In fact, the entire Eternal River Pocket Dimension is a part of this seal. The Magus who set up this pocket dimension had long before installed the time when the pocket dimension would appear. He even used your greed and sped up this process artificially. Until now, the breaking of the entire seal is already something that's unavoidable. We're done for. We South Coast, are we really going to be completely destroyed? Nanov's both eyes were slightly despondent. If it really linked to the underground, apart from his Enia ivory ring tower moving to a distant place and collectively migrating, there was no other better way. On the other side, Enna's expression was also very dark. Towards the viciousness of the underground tribes and their hatred towards humans, he who had the reference of historical books knew even more clearly. Once they were attacked and occupied, probably not just magi, even ordinary humans would face extinction. Watching these two magi who had sunk into a struggle, Leyland's pupils were very calm. In fact, with the radiant moon's strength and the assistance of the AI chip, if he made an all-out effort, not stinting on cultivating more precious materials, it was not impossible to entirely seal this pocket dimension. However, the crucial thing was, how would that benefit him? Nanov and Eni were both rank 3 magi. They were small and weak like ants before the underground tribes. Naturally, they would not wish to see them infiltrate the surface and threaten their positions. But Leyland was different. He was already a rank 5 warlock. His military strength was outstanding, and the underground world's first layer was also the weakest underground world. He totally had the premise of associating equally with the underground powerhouses. With the underground world's rich mineral resources, their legacy that had been passed down from the ancient times and the entirely different spell system, they could definitely bring Leyland great benefits. He believed, not just himself, even if it were other Morning Star existence in the central continent, once they knew about this passageway, they probably would not choose to seal it too. How? Have you thought about it? If you are willing, I can step out and strengthen the seal, gaining you 100 years' time. After a few minutes, Leyland spoke indifferently. Then, please, sir. Nanov and Eni took a glance at each other, and in the end still gritted their teeth and requested. No matter what, if there was another 100 years' time, be it discussing a countermeasure or directly retreating, there was more allowance for them. Okay, pass down my command, seal this area, I want to set up a strengthening spell. After hearing them say that, Leyland nodded, but instead sent away the two magi who wanted to stay and help. A Morning Star light screen enveloped the entire central hall with a buzz. Blue radiance was emitted in all directions, isolating it from the outside world. Ancient combined sealing spell. The blue radiance in Leyland's pupils flickered. Many materials were casually taken out from the space equipment. According to his original intentions, it was naturally to open the seal as soon as possible and gain the benefits. However, his current condition was not good. The All-Snake curse was like a sharp sword hanging above his head, causing him to have to end things here as quickly as he could and head towards the purgatory world to resolve the bloodline's shackles. Hence, postponing the disintegration of the seal for a period of time was also something that was in accordance to Leyland's interests. Perhaps there might be a need to move the Ouroboros clan here in the future, grasping trade with the underground world. Leyland had already drawn out a blueprint regarding the development of the Ouroboros clan in his mind. The expansion of the entire Ouroboros clan in the central continent had already reached its limits. Even without the appearance of the Flame Monarch, it would meet the resistance of other magi sooner or later. Although the elemental particles environment in the south coast was not much, towards warlocks that relied mainly on bloodline force, the influence in this aspect was much smaller than magi. Moreover, the entire central continent had not yet connected to the underground world's passageway. What was discovered occasionally were just a few totally sealed miniature underground space like that of the Twilight Zone. Once a passageway that connects to the entire underground world was developed, even simply controlling trade between the two places would bring about huge benefits, enough to allow the Ouroboros clan to make a rapid development. The top priority now is still to confirm if this connects to that ancient completed underground layer of the underground world, or the miniature sealed area like that of the Twilight Zone. Leyland stroked his chin. There was even a radiance constantly flickering in his pupils. If the place this links to is really that ancient underground layer, as long as we occupy here, the profits gained by the Ouroboros clan would definitely not a little bit less than the monarch of the skies that has control over the entire central continent's airship network. AI chip. Export spell formation layout. Beep. Mission established. Beginning coordination with supplementary assignment. The AI chip sound was as mechanical as usual, without the slightest emotions in it. A complicated yet detailed formation diagram was rapidly exported from the AI chip's database and was being projected by fluorescent light onto the hall's floor. The spell formation diagram illustrated by the fluorescent light combined with the original patterns on the floor harmoniously, forming a brand new formation. Beep. Separating black hole spell formation deductions setup completed. Estimated rate of success 98.99%. The AI chip sounded again. Very good. A piece of mithril with black spots was melted into juice before Leyland, spreading out evenly onto the ground at the position where the fluorescent light had originally shone. With Leyland's current alchemy grand master's academic achievements and the AI chip's fine and detailed assistance, the entire setting up of the spell formation proceeded very smoothly and was thoroughly completed in almost half an hour. Only, when setting up, Leyland would certainly not do it according to Nanov and his requests. He included many of his own smuggled goods in it instead. The entire spell formation continuously rumbled with a buzz, streaks of silver radiance rippled on the ground. Beep. Spell formation energy operating normally. Compatibility of connection 91.673%. Large amounts of data floated across Leyland's eyes. He could not help but nod secretly. It is a linking technique that is acquired after all. To have 90% compatibility is already not bad. Then, Leyland took in a deep breath. AI chip. Open up the connection assignment, attempting to establish a spatial link, searching coordinates. Accompanying the AI chip sound, the patterns on the ground suddenly changed. Its circulating speed was continuously increasing. Faint silver light emerged, undulating in midair, even slowly forming into a state of a semicircular arched door. Opposite the arched door was a patch of thick darkness, and a mirror-like radiance was constantly emitted. This was the smuggled goods Leyland had added. At the same time, while strengthening the seal, Leyland also left a way of escape for himself, and could even reach the other side of the space with the prerequisite of not damaging the original seal by directly going through the crack in the spell formation. You guys guard here. No matter who comes, kill them all. Leyland flicked his hands, and 4 translucent void assassins emerged. He faintly ordered a few sentences, and these 4 assassins immediately vanished into the void. Possessing rank 3 limit strength, and with the addition of this kind of ability to go through the void assassins were almost invincible existences in the south coast. 4 void assassins, along with the spell formation outside that Leyland had set up, even if the dark and light magi joined forces, they would definitely not be able to fight their way in. Although Leyland was more reassured towards Nanov and Eni, and he also knew that they did not have the guts, he would not entrust his hopes on their reverence towards him just like that. Countless historical examples have all proven that this was something very foolish. Leyland would certainly not do that. Underground and rescue, after preparing his backup plan, Leyland swished his robes and entered the arched door in midair. An icy membrane rippled as he passed through it. The moment he materialized, Leyland realized he'd stepped into another place. A dark, frigid aura permeated the air, one that was specific to the subterranean world. The density of darkness and earth energy particles was even greater than in Twilight Zone. This is the other end of the spatial tunnel, huh? Leyland swept his gaze across the surroundings. He was currently in a palace hall of sorts, where bizarrely styled sculptures were scattered around the vicinity. Once the light in the spell formation subsided, a thick layer of dust could be observed in the area. Inextinguishable flame, Leyland pointed ahead, and a bright and beautiful flame floated in front of him. This place seems to have been deserted for a very long while. Is it the depths of an ancient ruin? Leyland scanned the surroundings with his soul force, before realizing that the whole area seemed to be protected by a layer of mysterious energy. This mysterious energy even suppressed the soul force of a Magus. However, given that his true soul was at half moon, he could still cover a sizable portion of the area. It wasn't long before he discovered several passageways leading out. I hope there aren't any complex spell formations outside. This will become very troublesome. Leyland walked towards a large door, the unadorned yet awe-inspiring stone standing over 10 meters tall. On the left of the doors was the sculpture of a devil, on the right that of a beautiful angel. Ka-cha, ka-cha. Leyland stretched his hand forward as he pushed the door. Suddenly, 2 powerful streaks of lightning flashed and struck Leyland, but was repelled by Chemian scales. A pitch-black tunnel appeared in front of Leyland, and without any hesitation, he stepped forward. I never expected that I would chance across some magi on an expedition. This will save me loads of time. The corners of Leyland's lips curled upwards as he blended in with the darkness, before moving at a speed that defied the logics of physics. On the other side, a group of adventurers were running for their lives, escaping from something in the tunnel. Quick, it's catching up. This group of adventurers had a warrior adorning armor, an archer carrying a wooden bow, and the one that made up the most numbers were a group of magi garbed in robes and carrying strange tools. This party composition was still rather decent. However, this small party now were scurrying away in fear from something behind them, their clothes torn and tattered. Traces of blood tainted their body, revealing profuse injuries. Dum-dum, dum-dum. Behind them, in the darkness, thuds of heavy footsteps were heard. Upon hearing these noises, the people in the small party had their color drained from their faces as they continued to flee at a faster speed. Crash! A dark streak of light flashed, carrying a black long spear. It immediately penetrated the innate spell defense of one of the magi, pinning him to the floor. Xander, damn it! The leader, a brown-haired youth, turned back and saw his companion pinned to the ground with blood streaming out of his mouth. However, he gritted his teeth and continued fleeing. Run, hurry and run! His eyes turned bloodshot as he screamed at the top of his lungs. At the same time, a blazing flame of unwillingness and regret gnawed at his soul bit by bit. We were too careless. With our combined strength of 3 stars ranking, this vestige is way out of our league. Damn it. The danger level here is at least 5 stars. As long as I manage to make it out, I will definitely slay that damned asshole. No, Xander. The female archer slinging the bow on her back halted immediately as she knelt beside the Magus pinned to the ground. She then took out a green vial of potion and poured it on his wounds. It's no use, the leader roared, but he never stopped running. Tens of seconds later, that blood-curdling scream of his female party member sounded. The leader's face turned even more pale as he sped up. Dum-dum, dum-dum. The footsteps sounded behind him, like that of a death god who had come to reap their souls. Although the footsteps were slow, the speed was extremely fast. Not long later, the youth heard several more wretched cries behind him. It was only until now that he realized, to his astonishment, that not one of his companions had remained. No, I can't die here. I have to be a 5 stars adventure and even the crowned king adventurer. I have goals yet to be fulfilled, and to return the glory of my family, the revenge, and also my. Another beam of black light shot towards him and stopped his train of thoughts. Although the youth had attempted to maneuver out of the way, he was still grazed by that black light, causing him fall to the ground and cough out a pool of blood. Dum-dum, dum-dum. Along with the footsteps, a giant figure emerged from the darkness. It was a giant that stood tall at over 3 meters, with 2 long shafts of spears slung on its back. Complex runes covered his body, giving off a metallic luster. There was a grim expression on its face, as if it belonged to a dead creature. Only 2 scarlet rays of light were projected from its pupils. It's here, the youth's teeth clattered. This undead creature that stood in front of him was a defense mechanism of the vestige. Previously, when the group had broken through a tomb-like room, it had started to chase them. The undead giant had a powerful physical attack with a high resistance to magic spells. It led the youth to despair. He could only watch on as his party members perished one by one under the hands of this giant. Ultimately, he was the only one left standing. Dum dum, dum dum. The giant walked over as he unsheathed one of the spears on his back. "No, I don't want to. Please." Tears poured from the youth's eyes as he started to turn deranged. Whoosh. The spear thrusted forward, but funnily enough, it remained hoisted in midair. The anticipated pain did not come, which caused the youth to reopen his eyes. He saw a black shield protecting him at the front, engaging in a deadlock with the spear. I'm saved." The youth collapsed weakly and laid on the ground with tears of joy flowing from his eyes. "Ahu!" The giant withdrew his spear and turned his body to the back, howling towards the darkness. Very soon, he staggered half a step backwards as if some sort of ferocious predator was in front of it. Interesting. Although it seems to be a body made of flesh and blood, there seem to be some modifications added to it. It's rather akin to a metallic-bodied demon right now, huh? Even its consciousness was wiped out, with the only defense mechanism within it remaining. Leyland stepped forward from the shadows, blue light shining from his eyes as he scanned the giant in front of it. Moreover, these runes on the body, it seemed really similar to that of branded swordsmen. Leyland always held onto part of the branded swordsman's inheritance, but it was extremely lacking of information. Even after the simulation and conjecture from the AI chip, it could only reach the strength of a rank 1 Magus, which was not of much use. Right now, after the AI chip had upgraded several times and even added troves of information from the Great Library, it could raise the power of branded swordsmen from rank 1 to 3. However, for Leyland, who had the backing of the Ouroboros clan and the Warlock alliance, these branded swordsmen were relatively useless to him. Hence, Leyland did not mass-produce these branded swordsmen cannon fodder. However, at this moment, Leyland could clearly see the runes of branded swordsmen on this giant. Although the style is slightly different, with modifications made on top of the original school of thought, this is no doubt the runes of branded swordsmen. Just from looking at the runes, and the energy that it radiated had gave Leyland many fresh ideas and inspiration about the branded swordsmen. Perhaps, after combining the knowledge found on the continent and in the subterranean world, the AI chip might be able to produce runes which can create Morning Star branded swordsmen. Arg! Although the giant has discovered how powerful Leyland was, the defense mechanism inside its consciousness still made it reach out his hands. 2 black spears soared towards Leyland like 2 dragons. Peng! Pa! A layer of black scales emerged from Leyland's palms. As astonishing scene was created accompanied by sparks and screeching sounds. The 2 black spears that the giant hurled had been caught firmly in Leyland's palms. The explosive power isn't bad, with the strength at 50 degrees of so. It is rather similar to a rank 3 Magus attack. Leyland nodded his head, but the youth at the side had his eyes bulging out. During the escape earlier, he had seen many of his companions perish under the mighty black spear. Even magic defense spells proved to be no defense against it. However, Leyland had managed to catch it in his hands. This Magus, is he a monster too? The youth looked at Leyland's appearance, garbed in luxurious black robes with a mask. Leyland gave off a regal yet mysterious aura, yet he did not seem to be a savage or tyrant. Grorer. The giant was stupefied momentarily before giving off a huge roar. The sound waves involuntarily forced the youth to cover his ears. At the same time, black energy particles which could be seen by the naked eye surged towards the giant like water to a sponge, as the runes on the giant's body began to flicker. Grorer! With the howling noises made, a spell began to surface. The image of a dark creature's head appeared, bearing its razor-sharp fangs as it was sent flying towards Leyland. Rank 3 spell, Darkness Crunch. This spell seemed to be missing on the continent for thousands of years. Only the Great Library in Sky City had mentioned of this before. Leyland rubbed his chin. A lost and forgotten spell need not necessarily meant that it was powerful. It could be due to not keeping up with the times and entered natural selection. He would definitely not make the assumption that anything ancient is powerful. The blue light in Leyland's eyes flashed, and the AI chip made its calculations. Seconds later, the principle of this rank 3 spell casting and even the spell model had been conjectured by the AI chip. So this is how it works. Although this spell isn't too bad, but it requires a huge amount of darkness elemental energy particles. No wonder the central continent had phased this spell out. Arthur Empire with the AI chip's deductions, Leyland instantly obtained the spell's model and learnt all of its weaknesses. The darkness elemental particles just aren't concentrated enough in the central continent. Perhaps it can only be used in a paradise for dark magi like the subterranean world. Fight darkness with light. A holy white radiance was formed at Leyland's fingertip. While he was a dark magus himself, it wasn't like he couldn't use any life or light element spells. In reality, with enough spiritual force and access to spell models, magi could employ spells of any type. However, there was a difference due to vitality and elemental affinity. Leyland might be extremely proficient with darkness spells, even having an added bonus to their power, but he would find it difficult to use light and life element spells, and the power could even be diminished. Now, for instance, the light-type spell that Leyland was casting consumed a lot of energy to produce a spell half as strong as one by a regular magus. He'd long since solidified darkness elemental particles, something that only made it harder for him to use light spells. However, with Leyland's current strength, even a small portion of his power would cause the spell to be a bane to all darkness. Leyland seemed to move exceedingly slowly, but somehow arrived above the monster before it could do anything. The light-tipped finger tapped the center of the monster's skull. Ow! A bit of light shone above the monster's head before it began to flicker and become more dazzling. Ka-cha, ka-cha. Like the sound of glass breaking, many cracks appeared on its head and it then exploded, melting into nothingness amidst the white light. Light-type spells can still restrain darkness-type spells, but that also depends on the strength of both parties. Leyland had his own understanding of the relationship between elements. If darkness elemental particles were to be likened to fire, then light-type energy particles would be like water. While a ladle of water could extinguish sparks, it could do nothing against a sea of fire. On the other hand, if the fire was intense enough, a few droplets of rainwater would be evaporated. Ow! After the monster head was easily smashed by Leyland, the black giant took several steps back. In its dull, mechanical eyes, traces of terror could be seen. He let out a few meaningless howls and made to escape. But how could Leyland let go of such a great guinea pig? Stay here! Along with Leyland's slight smile, a few black shackles appeared in midair and bound him tightly. No matter how the giant kept snarling, there was nothing he could do against these chains. Soon after, his figure shrunk in size till it entered a crystal ball in Leyland's hands, like a bug that was frozen in amber. The hoarding spell works, which means he isn't some living being but a magic being without a soul. While it was just a short period of time exchanging blows with him, Leyland now had an understanding of the composition of the giant. He had evidently gone through the refining of a branded swordsman and had even reached a very high level. His body had already gone through elemental modification and become crystallized and somewhat translucent. This material was the best to make magic beings. After elemental modification, flesh not only retained its original defensive and offensive abilities, it could use spells without obstructions. In just a short period of time, this was all Leyland could tell. For things on a deeper level, he would need to do more experiments and dissection. This, Lord, thank you for your help. At this moment, Leyland noticed the young adventurer collapsed on the ground at the side. He was evidently a magus, though he had a very low rank. This was all the strength he had, and yet had come to explore. He was rather lucky not to die from the mechanisms or curses. This language. His thanks meant nothing to Leyland, but the language he spoke in delighted Leyland. It's very similar to the Twilight language, though there are minute differences in pronunciation. There's no need to learn a new language. Leyland was surprised, but then found this reasonable. Twilight Zone was a part of the subterranean world, and was only isolated because of the battle between two morning stars. Before that happened, they must have been using the same language and writing as the subterranean world. What's your name? Since the issue with language was solved, Leyland had no desire to search his soul. The information he needed was too high-leveled, and someone with such a tiny role would not know much. With Leyland's dreamscape force field, he was confident he could make this person reveal basic information on the culture and geography unwittingly. My name is Joe Georgian. The young magus was silent for a while and then stated his name. Your name is very unique, Leyland commented. It wasn't unexpected for the social customs of the underground world to be different from Magi on the surface. "By the way, where is this? What's the world outside like?" Leyland asked without holding back. A hazy force field was produced from his body. This was the ability he had gained after undergoing dreamscape modification, and he possessed powerful illusory strength. Ever since he had gotten this, Leyland would not search souls or any similar methods unless it was truly necessary. A Magus who played around with souls would not have a good name in the Magus world. When unnecessary, Leyland still wished to maintain his reputation. A good reputation was still a benefit. If used well, he might even obtain unexpected rewards. This is the Thunderbird region, and rumored to be the hololand of the Lias family. After Leyland's words, Georgian first looked dazed, eyes losing focus before he began to disclose everything unwittingly. The more he heard, the more Leyland looked solemn. Poor little guy, he's been enticed into adventuring into someone else's restricted area. After he'd listened to everything, Leyland watched Georgian, eyes full of pity. This little guy has definitely fallen into some huge conspiracy. However, this was none of his business. He'd found out that this was the territory of the Arthur Empire underground, and this was a massive empire. There were large numbers of other races outside, and had a surface area countless times larger than Twilight Zone. In the Arthur Empire, there had never been a lack of morning star ranks. There were even rumors of radiant moon magi. Such good news allowed Leyland to confirm that there was a huge possibility of this place being the complete first layer of the underground. After Leyland got all the intel he wanted, Georgian immediately looked alert, and then turned sorrowful. "My apologies. At the thought of my companions, I became absent-minded." In his memories, Leyland had only asked why he had come to these ruins. He, who thought back to his comrades, was lost in thought. A sad feeling rose in his heart, and he did not suspect any changes to his memories. When it came to manipulating memories, Leyland was at the level of a grandmaster. This little Magus had had his memories altered, and yet not discovered it at all. As long as Leyland wanted to, he could work out a brand new set of memories from childhood to adulthood for any Magus below Morning Star without the other party noticing. This was obviously something normal Radiant Moons or even Breaking Dawn Monarchs could do, but with the AI chip's abilities to simulate reality, it just took more time and effort on Leyland's end. "All right, Mr. Georgian, I understand all you've gone through. Forgive me for my bluntness, but this is a place you really shouldn't be in. It's better for you to leave with me." Leyland took several steps forward. In exchange for the intel he had been given, he didn't mind saving the boy on the way and send him out of the ruins. "Thank you so much, my lord." Georgian's eyes were full of gratitude as he followed closely behind Leyland, as if afraid he would be left behind. After all the dangers today, he knew very well that if Leyland did not bring him along, he would be trapped in the ruins sooner or later and die by the hands of the mechanisms. Hualala. Numerous pitch-black lightning formed a cage with all types of beasts roaring. A black dot the size of sesame constantly grew in size amidst the lightning and eventually turned into two figures, dashing out while braving the lightning. "All right, we're out." Leyland shook his robes and put Georgian, who was in his arms, down. "We're out." He still looked dazed. He had never known how dangerous the ruins were. Things had been smooth sailing when he had entered, but while exiting, they had met with many dangers, especially the lightning jail at the exit. He'd remembered that when he had first arrived, there was no such spell pattern sealed here. Seeing this, he was extremely relieved. If not for Leyland, he would probably die in the ruins even if he had 9 lives. Georgian couldn't help but look at the black structures behind him. The ruins were now like a monster with its mouth wide open, swallowing the lives of all adventurers. "My lord, do you think we should leave now?" Georgian asked carefully. He'd grown to understand Leyland's terrifying abilities after following him around. "That's not possible now." Leyland shook his head. "Why?" Georgian could not understand, and his expression quickly changed. A few streaks of blue figures appeared around them at some point, surrounding them. "Thorned Thunderbird, how brazen of you, intruding into the restricted area of the Liars family." The Magi surrounding Leyland and Georgian wore robes and had long, ocean blue hair. To his surprise, these silver-pupiled, fair-skinned people had an obvious aura from a bloodline on them. They were a group of warlocks. Bloodline warlocks. I never thought there'd be warlock inheritances in the subterranean world. Light flashed in Leyland's eyes. No, this is only to be expected. After all, the subterranean world is much more vast than the surface world, and it's normal for there to be ancient warlock inheritances. I just never expected that there would be warlocks protecting the other side of the tunnel in the Eternal Planes pocket dimension. Leyland surveyed his surroundings. The warlocks surrounding them looked very young, but this was a side effect of their bloodlines. They were in face much older, and the aged aura created a huge contrast with their handsome faces. They're at least rank 2, also this bloodline. A light blue tint covered Leyland's eyes. The surrounding warlocks were just as shocked seeing that 2 people had been able to exit the restricted area. AI Chip, scan their bloodlines and match it with the database, Leyland commanded inside his mind. These warlocks were under Morning Star and did not notice any of Leyland's actions. The AI Chip quickly obtained what he wanted. Collection of bloodline data complete, comparing with database. Determined to be ancient thorned thunderbird. Immediately after, the AI Chip showed all information on the ancient thorned thunderbird. Beep. Ancient thorned thunderbird, rank 6 being, rumored to be descendant of the primordial thunderbird, possesses powerful thunder and lightning abilities and soundwave attacks, likes to dwell in areas with plentiful metal elementals. Evaluation, incomparably dangerous. The nemesis of ancient metal race. Bloodline warlocks from rank 6 beings. No wonder I felt the bloodline giving me some slight pressure. Leyland watched the surrounding warlocks with some pity in his eyes. It's a pity that the warlocks' bloodlines have weakened quite a bit and can't be purified to its original rank 6. The warlocks surrounding Leyland might have bloodline from a rank 6 ancient thorned thunderbird, but their status was similar to the black Horal snake warlocks of the Ouroboros clan. The bloodline had weakened and lost all the power from their ancestors. However, since they exist, there must be powerful people within this warlock family. I should be able to purify their bloodline. Leyland shot a glance at these warlocks with malicious intent, giving them a feeling as if calamity loomed. However, this is the Liars family's restricted area, and you intentionally got these adventurers to enter. Seems like there's some unspeakable secret inside. Leyland thought about it for a while and did not eliminate the possibility of the Liars family giving out this news in order to get blood sacrifices, attracting adventurers to come and explore. If that was the case, it would explain why Georgian and his crew were obviously low-ranked, but could enter the ruins without obstructions. Why are you still talking to them? All magi who sully our Liars family have only the ending of death. The warlocks of the Liars family were urged on by someone like a leader and immediately chose to attack without hesitation. Fine, minute static electricity force field were produced from their bodies, forming a powerful domain that kept Leyland and Georgian within. Leyland could practically feel their bloodlust, and they evidently wanted to keep them here no matter the cost. This spell. Seeing these warlocks all having blue electricity shooting everywhere that formed a large-scaled static electricity field that merged and amplified each other, Leyland looked slightly interested. Rank 1 spell, static electricity field. Determined to be opponent's rank 1 innate spell that can produce static electricity force field on a large scale. Energy consumption at the minimum, and has effects of amplifying each other. The AI Chip transmitted the functions of the spell at this moment. Kill him! The leader donned a layer of lightning armor, and 2 gigantic blue bright wings stretched behind his back, causing his speed to suddenly increase. He almost turned into a streak of blue lightning. Rank 2 Thorned Thunderbird Warlock Bloodline spell determined to be. Lightning armor, rank 3 Bloodline spell, Wings of Lightning. Through the opponent's bloodline activities and spells, the AI Chip managed to gather much information, and large amounts of data was showed in front of Leyland. As expected of an ancient rank 6 bloodline, these innate abilities are very practical. Leyland sighed slightly. It was a pity that there were no Morning Star warlocks in their midst. No matter how useful a spell, they were pointless if they did not reach a certain level. Break! Leyland spat out a syllable, and terrifying darkness-type elemental particles spread like a rising tide. Surging energy particles thundered as they turned into a giant beast with a weapon, attacking the opponent's joint static electricity force field. TSS. Blue sparks flashed and mixed with streams of black gas. Immediately after, there was a dull sound of thunder, and even the ground shook. Miserable cries rose and fell in succession, and the Thunderbird warlocks who were only rank 1 and 2 crumpled to the ground. Chew. The leader in the air who saw this emitted a piercing cry, turning and then transforming into lightning and leaving. "Get down here!" Leyland's eyes were never on him, but a faint image of a double-headed black snake had already appeared on him, 4 blood-red eyes giving him a dead stare. "HSS, HSS!" The snake kept flicking its tongue and quickly drew this leader into its mouth. Blue lightning flashed everywhere and then disappeared. The double-headed black snake meandered to the ground and spat out the leader. However, he had already fainted, and the lightning around his body had disappeared without a trace. Too weak, much too weak, this extent? Leyland narrowed his eyes. A bloodline like this wasn't enough to even arouse his interest to extract it. My lord, we... At the other side, Georgian, who had seen Leyland and Liars fighting, had been so afraid that he'd fainted before. The Liars family's reputation was like a sun in the sky within the Arthur Empire. It was said they had a morning Tsar in charge. Wasn't this Magus seeking death by provoking him? However, the crux of the issue was that whether Leyland or the Liars family, Georgian could not afford to offend either side and almost burst into tears. "I'll wait for a while more here. Leave first." Leyland shooed him away. How can I leave my lord behind to confront the Liars family?" He hesitated, but Leyland obviously could tell. Once their reinforcements come, it wouldn't be just these sort of low-ranked characters. "What, you mean you're thinking of going against the Liars family with me?" Leyland had a half-smile on his face as he watched Georgian. No, my lord. I shall take my leave first." He immediately turned pale and fled at lightning speed after bowing, as if there was some ferocious beast chasing him. Watching his back, Leyland shook his head. He was just a tiny character after all, and if he really did stay, unafraid of death, he'd definitely be affected. Choosing to leave was a rather sensible decision. Now, Leyland could not be bothered with this boy. He watched a trace of lightning shooting over from the distance, a smile lighting up his face slightly. Choo-choo! It was as if tens of thousands of birds were calling at the same time. When the lightning disappeared, there was another figure in the sky. "You attacked them." The newcomer was very young, and his brows were furrowed in his anger. He'd evidently been angered by the miserable state of the many Liars family warlocks on the ground. "They offended me. I've been benevolent enough not to kill them. If I did things like I usually do, they can only descend to the underworld and repent for their sins." Leyland shrugged. Huala, white electric current streaked past, as if tearing through the sky. In midair, the warlock's overbearing and furious words could be heard. "Good, very good. Then I'll let you see a bit of my benevolence." Terrifying energy from someone who had reached the realm of a rank 4 warlock and attaining Morning Star burst from his body. Countless dark clouds converged, enveloping the whole region. Rumble. 8 blue pillars of light instantly descended. Boundless lightning shot out from the pillars, forming a large purgatory. Lightning and fire gathered in purgatory and trapped Leyland within. Rank 4 Thorned Thunderbird Warlock bloodline spell determined to be Berserk Lightning Prison. The AI chip projected the opponent's spell before Leyland at this moment. "A rank 4 spell. Looks like I have to get a little serious." Leyland's expression became grimmer. He, who now was struck by the curse mark of 10,000 snakes, could only display Morning Star strength and was on par with the opponent. Kai, Huala. Numerous electricity snakes surrounded by flames opened their mouths full of blood and devoured Leyland. Dazzling lightning was very harsh on the eyes, but a hint of black rays leaked from the electricity. The black radiance grew until it cut through the lightning, turning into an illusory, terrifying giant serpent and appeared behind Leyland. HSS! The serpent had shackles with metallic stings, but it still paid that no mind as it snarled at the lightning clouds in the sky. Warlock. Such a terrifying and evil bloodline force. From within the thunderclouds, the warlock's bewildered voice could be heard, following which the voice silenced and turned into the piercing sounds of rumbling. Choo-choo! A streak of dazzling blue radiance abruptly burst forth from the clouds, landing on Leyland's shoulder. Booming thunderclap! The opponent's voice only reached Leyland after the electricity struck Leyland. Meeting and sneak attack since he was struck by an attack that was faster than the speed of sound, Leyland could only hear it after the fact. His expression showed his confusion as he glanced at his shoulder. His black scholar robes had already been torn up, revealing fine snake scales. However, they were now charred, and a few pieces had even fallen off. Traces of dark red could be seen where he was wounded. "Not bad, you could break through my defenses." Leyland looked slightly stunned. Following that, terrifying black streams of gas converged on the serpentine figure behind him. It swelled up, flicking its tail forth. Boom! A pillar of lightning broke down, and as if some chain reaction had been triggered, the 7 other pillars of lightning fell in succession, causing the berserk lightning prison to crumble. The giant serpent bellowed with rage, the sound waves engulfing the entire area and causing the thunderclouds in the air to be torn apart to reveal a tremendous bird. The giant bird was dark blue, with each spike of a feather lustrous like steel. Streaks of blue lightning twirled around the bird, and it seemed magnificent, its eyes glinting with wisdom. The ancient thorned thunderbird. No, it's just an immature one that still isn't at its final stage. Warlocks with high-ranked bloodlines might have morning star arcane arts that allowed atavism, but they could only transform into a young version of their source creature. Bevis was the same. The misty fog giant he transformed into was only an adolescent. Only after reaching the peak of their bloodline could a warlock have the full might of the ancient creature. The thorned thunderbird was a rank 6 being in ancient times, while the warlock here was only at rank 4. The thorned thunderbird that he'd transformed into was naturally still young and immature. However, it was a rank 6 being after all, and even if it was at its immature phase, it still surpassed many rank 4 beings. Chew chew, the tremendous thunderbird called out as it soared in the air. Boundless lightning fell with each flap of its wings. The electric arcs on his body grew increasingly dazzling till they enveloped his whole body and turned him into a large lightning bird. With ear-piercing rumbling, the lightning bird swooped down. Lightning flashed in the surrounding area constantly, creating a terrifying region of lightning. Interesting. A smile adorned Leyland's lips, and the Chemian Emperor's figure grew even more distinct, as if the ancient creature had truly come to this world. HSS! The giant serpent snarled and collided with the lightning bird, giving rise to countless ripples. Rumble. The earth tremored and energy undulations swept through the region. The smoke in the air formed a huge mushroom cloud, frightening power extending into the sky. The bedrock cracked, and large amounts of boulders that were tens of thousands of tons tumbled down to form giant pits upon collision. Once all the smoke and dust settled, the area where Leyland had been now only had a large depression and pit. Much of the rock had just melted to form a unique crystal. Ha! Ha! One figure walked out from within the pit holding a black one. Damn it! If it weren't for the all-snake curse, this mere morning star warlock wouldn't be able to harm me at all. Fury was evident in Leyland's expression. Most of his clothes had been damaged, revealing the muscles below. He cut a sorry figure. The opposing morning star warlock, on the other hand, had completely fainted and was now held in Leyland's hands. Based on the intel from before, this morning star warlock is only an elder in the Liar's family. There's still a warlock who surpassed Morning Star. Leyland turned grim. Kid, you're in luck. You might not have to die here today, but... Pack. Leyland tossed him to the ground casually, and a large syringe appeared in his hands. Though your body is only at rank 4, the blood concentration isn't half bad. It's enough to be used for samples and as a guinea pig. A short distance away from these black ruins were dark hills. Lights were reflected from atop the hills, making it as dazzling as crystal. These hills had peaks made out of metal, and had at their heart a metallic castle that stood tall. This was the Liar's Warlock family's main base, and where their headquarters was. It's rumored that the Thorned Thunderbird likes places where high-grade metallic ores are in the surroundings. Looks like it's true. Leyland floated in the air, observing the large castle. The warlock from before looked dispirited while being held in Leyland's hand, eyes full of terror. Your humble servant, Leyland Farlier, is here to greet the Liar's family. Leyland transmitted with a thick and low voice, not bothering with the warlock in his hands. His voice resounded in the castle, making contact with endless spiritual force and soul force. Who is it? What a terrifying and sinister bloodline aura. Look who he has in his hands. He dares take an elder of our Liar's family captive. How bold. Various roars mixed with spiritual force charged out, but Leyland easily evaded them. These people who were a dime a dozen obviously could not draw his interest. What Leyland focused on was the aura hidden deep inside the castle. This person had obviously passed through the threshold of Morning Star and entered rank 5. Leyland floated in the air and waited for a long while. There were quite a few warlocks with varying abilities that came out, but the owner of that aura wasn't even alarmed. Leyland thought about it for a while, and his rank 5 Chemian Emperor figure appeared behind him. A trace of his half-moon soul force surged out like a huge dragon. The power of someone at the same rank immediately got the other party's attention. Violent lightning caused the earth to rumble and mountains to break as a powerful conscient came over. "Who dares disturb my sleep?" Terrifying rank 5 aura was transmitted, wreaking havoc like a storm. Those warlocks knelt down respectfully. Grand Elder. A streak of lightning was like a godly sword that broke through the first floor and appeared in the air, revealing the figure of a middle-aged man. His features were characteristic of the Liar's family: dark blue long hair, silver pupils, and slightly pale skin. However, his expression was ripe with arrogance, as if nothing in the world was worth troubling himself over. After seeing Leyland, his expression grew less intense. "A rank 5 warlock. Why have you come to create trouble in our Liar's family?" "No, that aura. My friend, how about we go to a remote area to discuss this further?" Leyland chuckled and flung the warlock in his hands into the group of people, creating chaos amongst their ranks. "Come with me." The warlock took a look at Leyland and disappeared like lightning, moving like a meteor. Leyland followed behind him, large amounts of black gas surrounding his body. He did not move urgently, but while he didn't seem fast, he kept up with the warlock with no signs of falling behind. The warlock ahead brought Leyland along to a large oceanic lake before stopping. "Good day, sir. I am Leyland Farlier, and I hope—" Leyland began to speak, but his expression suddenly changed. Dark blue lightning crashed down once more, and an attack that surpassed the morning star realms struck down. Booming thunderclap appeared once more. However, this time the spell's destructive ability was far more powerful than before. There were now 5 rays that attacked from different angles, sealing off Leyland's path of retreat. Afterwards, a gigantic thorned thunderbird phantom appeared behind him, widening its sharp beak in Leyland's direction. Terrifying sound waves brought with them the power of thunder and lightning. Rank 5 spell, Thorned Thundercree. The opponent had cast the spells quickly, and each one was hidden quite well. He practically didn't have to think at all. If this was a regular rank 5 warlock, not having enough time to defend would be a very dangerous problem. However, Leyland was different, and his thoughts moved faster than electricity. Just at the moment the lightning was about to reach his body, the tremendous phantom of a Chemian emperor burst forth and wound itself around Leyland. A gigantic black hole began to form in the snake's mouth. Rank 5 Chemian emperor innate skill, Devour. The 5 streaks of lightning were instantly sucked into the black hole, turning into an unending stream of life force. Following that, piercing sound waves that were mixed with lightning and fire rushed forth and smashed into the large Chemian emperor. Scales flew everywhere, but then regenerated at a rapid pace. After these 2 waves of attacks passed, the Chemian emperor figure dissipated to reveal Leyland, who was not the least bit injured. "Sir, what is the meaning of this?" Leyland asked in a cold voice, the iciness extending to his gaze. "AI Chip, if I completely undo the seal, how long can I fight?" Leyland asked inside his head. His bloodline was still sealed, and dealing with a Morning Star warlock was already quite tough on him. With a rank 5 bloodline warlock with the bloodline of the ancient thorned thunderbird against him, things were even worse. However, if the opponent wasn't tactful, Leyland had no choice but to completely unseal himself and teach him an unforgettable lesson, perhaps by ensuring his fall. Beep. All snake curse will increase absorption rate if host undoes seal. Maximum resistance time, 7-min-34s, the AI Chip loyally intoned. In other words, after I undo my seal, I'll need to eliminate the opponent in 7 minutes and then reseal my bloodline. Even if I manage that, there should be terrible consequences. AI Chip. Beep. Each unsealing will reduce the time left to the curse flaring up by 7 months, even if successfully resealed. The AI Chip intoned. Enhancing lightning runes, Leyland had previously sealed off his bloodline force to stop the curse from flaring up. Naturally, he could undo the seal in times of danger and restore his strength to the peak of rank 5. However, the curse would absorb even more energy from him every time he did so. Even if he successfully sealed himself up again, the time he had left would be brought down by about 7 months. Leyland had only 2 years left. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he definitely would not do this. However, he would have no choice but to use this method in times of crisis, even if the temporary help resulted in long-term danger. Leyland's cold pupils were fixed on the rank 5 warlock in front of him. "Good, very good. Since you were able to take on my attack, you have the right to speak to me on equal grounds." Unexpectedly, the great elder revealed a rigid smile. "Let me introduce myself. My name is Eam Lyres, rank 5 Warlock and the Grand Elder of the Lyres family." Seeing the opponent withdrawing all the electricity around his body, Leyland was rendered speechless. He could tell that this Eam was definitely a very arrogant warlock. Unless he showed enough power to threaten him, it would be impossible to speak to him on equal terms. Now, after attacking and finding out Leyland's abilities, he suddenly was more approachable. Though still on his guard, Leyland was more than willing to avoid needless conflicts. "I've already introduced myself before. My name is Leyland. Lord Eam's way of greeting others is really quite unique." He. Eam merely smiled in answer to Leyland's words and did not address them. Instead, he observed Leyland with interest. "You aren't a Magus of the subterranean world, are you?" Indeed. There was no way for Leyland to hide this. Were he a rank 2 or 3 Magus, he could conceal himself from Eam since it would make sense for there to be no mention of him anywhere. But a rank 5 warlock of unknown origins was rather suspicious. Given that this was an inherited bloodline, how could there be no information on it? Would the Lyres family not know beforehand about a warlock family with a rank 5 serpent bloodline? Leyland had burst out of nowhere, and this rank 5 warlock had no information about him. That led Eam to his conclusion. "As expected, my lord is a Magus from the world above ground." Seeing Leyland admitting this, Eam nodded and looked confident. "Yes, I do come from the surface, and I'm the head of the Magi organizations in control of the passage to the surface. Lord Eam shouldn't be any ordinary warlock, right? The passage in the Thunderbird Holy Land." Leyland shot Eam a glance. To expand the passage between the surface and underground, he needed to find something like a spokesperson here. It seemed that Eam and the Lyres family suited this role well. Not only was he very powerful, there was nothing he didn't know about the passage. More importantly, they had long since gained control of the exit. "We obviously know about it. In actuality, it's a secret that my ancestor found out. Ever since then, our Lyres family has settled here, and we've been trying to make contact with the surface that's been sealed from us." Though Eam was speaking in very vague terms, Leyland could imagine the carnage involved. Things like vying for this territory, trying to damage the seal and attracting adventurers to become blood sacrifices here were perhaps merely the tip of the iceberg. There was still much that was unknown regarding what they had attempted on the sly. What was most crucial was the fact that they had persevered for so long. "Since you were able to come over, the seal at the surface world should be about to crumble, right?" Eam looked at Leyland, frowning slightly. "Based on my estimations, the seal should still hold for a period of time. Actually, I secretly came over through a crack in the seal. On the surface, the seal can still hold for about a century." "A century? That seems rather long. Did anything go wrong with the sacrifices? Or was the construction of coordinates on both ends not done well, resulting in a huge energy consumption?" Eam's expression went dark, while Leyland maintained his silence, not admitting that he'd tampered with it. "But for Sir Leyland to pass through the cracks in the seal must mean that your attainments in spell formations must be at the level of grandmasters." Eam's gaze towards Leyland had now turned more gentle. People who were grandmasters in fields of magic were highly regarded. "This tiny ability really isn't worth mentioning. Well then, since we own one end of the passage each and both have great influence in our respective regions." Leyland mentioned what he had been preparing to say for a long time. "Forming an alliance is beneficial to both of us." Eames spoke straightforwardly, the smile on his arrogant face widening. He stepped forward while beaming and extended his right arm towards Leyland. "Welcome, partner." "It's my honor." Leyland grinned and extended his right arm as well. The two hands grasped each other, and golden light flowed out. Fine golden letters were like ants as they crawled everywhere. An alliance between Magi was even more important and solemn than an agreement. Most of the time, a very serious ceremony would be conducted, and even a third party would be invited to be the witness. Leyland and Eam were both rank 5 warlocks. While they didn't need to go to the trouble and do all that, a basic oath was required. However, what they were agreeing to now was a general-purpose oath, and the details would be determined through discussions afterwards by their subordinates. After the oath was done with, the two of them had gained a tacit understanding. They laughed, feeling like their relationship had gotten better. Though this sort of oath could be violated, they each had control of their sides of the passage, which signified a great amount of benefits. Leyland would not want to destroy this unless he'd gone mad. As for how things would progress after this, that probably wouldn't have much to do with him anymore. By that time, he would either have broken through his bloodline shackles and soared into the sky, leaving him in the dust, or be sealed to death by the curse mark. He, whose bloodline force had been completely severed from him, would die. Whatever happened, there would not be any issues here. Sir Eam, Leyland laughed as he spoke. Just call me Eam, Leyland. You're qualified to do so. Eam chuckled, though his facial muscles were obviously a little stiff. However, that just made this moment all the more rare. All right, Eam, I'm quite interested in the spell you used just now and that instantaneous effect. Leyland smiled and asked. The instantaneous lightning spell was very frightening, and Eam had been able to produce 5 streaks. Leyland was very interested in this technique. Oh, this. Eam nodded. We of the Liars family inherited the bloodline of the Thorned Thunderbird, which means we're proficient in lightning-type spells. Booming Thunderclap is one of the arcane arts we created from experiments where warlocks at Morning Star and above combine different innate spells. While the might isn't as powerful as a real Morning Star arcane art, it's quite effective. Leyland couldn't help but nod. Experiments of combining bloodline spells and creating a correct arcane art might sound easy, but was definitely far from it. A Morning Star arcane art was the fusion of rank 1 to 4 innate spells. The opponent's booming lightning thunder only used 1 or 2 bloodline spells, and matched with specific energy undulations and other spell models, formed a unique arcane art. Though I don't mind telling you the principle behind the arcane art, it's a pity that you aren't of the bloodline of the Thorned Thunderbird. You can't use it. Arcane arts like these usually needed specific bloodline spells, and some needed the usage of bloodline force. That was why Eam wasn't afraid of revealing this information. Actually, I don't want to know about that. Rather, I'm interested in the technique where you amplified a streak of lightning 5 times, Leyland said as he hastily shook his head. He could not express interest in bloodline spells, or else he'd be thought to be coveting Eam's bloodline. No matter how good their relationship might be, this would entail burying a thorn in Eam's heart. What Leyland truly wanted to know was how he had amplified the lightning force. With the AI chip, he could clearly see that Eam had only produced 1 booming thunderclap, and it was only slightly more powerful than that of the Morning Star Warlock. However, it had transformed after passing through some carved inscription that was like a spell formation, and been amplified till it was almost terrifying. Oh, that! Eam patted his Magus robes in pride, a ring of dazzling light floating around his body and creating a gigantic ring of lightning. Unbelievably large lightning runes that exceeded Leyland's expectations undulated out with a complicated radiance. This is one of the works that I'm most proud of. Eam watched the complicated lightning runes and seemed to be intoxicated. These are runes that I obtained from a primordial lightning tree. It seemed to have been created naturally, yet held some mysterious strength. I couldn't copy the strength, so all I could do was embroider it onto my robes. The silver lightning ring spell formation returned and shrank to become a dazzling silver rune, emitting a splendid luster on Eam's Magus robes. With this primordial magic robe, other lightning-type spells are amplified a little as well, but it can increase the might of booming thunderclap 5-fold. Eam lovingly touched the robes he was wearing, completely engrossed. If being in bliss is an ability, then Eam, you must be the darling of the heavens. Leyland smiled slightly and spoke flatteringly, a trace of blue flashing in his eyes.